Okay, so this is just another unscripted waffle, serving as a bit of an addendum, I suppose, to the Helen Ziller bit that I put up earlier. I just wanted to take a couple of minutes to talk about Black Economic Empowerment, BEE, policies, to add a bit of context to that portion of the woke politics discussion. This is mostly for non-South Africans. I very much doubt that any South Africans need reminding about what BEE is or why it sucks. Okay, so Black Economic Empowerment, BEE, in South Africa is a clear and distinct descendant of affirmative action policies created in 1960s America. Goddamn hippies. I don't want to get into all the details about BEE because neither you or I have that sort of time. But suffice it to say, it's a demographic based hiring quota that affects companies over a certain size or revenue. And it is more or less an inversion of the social justice hierarchy of victimhood that you guys know in the States, with disabled black women at the very top of the hiring list and able bodied white men all the way at the bottom of it. Okay, so bear in mind that black, according to BEE, is defined as black African, Indian, colored, yeah, as long as you were born in South Africa. And also, I think Chinese has been added to the, obviously, Chinese has been added to the list. I don't know if you need to be born in South Africa for that one. So if you're black and Zimbabwean, from a BEE perspective, you might as well be white, right? If you're, what this means is that if you're white and you're interested in a position, and the employer indicates that it's an EE or employment equity position, there's probably not much point in even applying for that job. The absurdity of this is really highlighted when, in a situation when like an employer has, let's say, three positions to fill, but they need two of them to be employment equity hires. Because then, if you're a white guy, not only do you have to be the best candidate for your position, but you're also competing against any whites that may be the best candidates for the two positions you're not applying for. Because if either of them gets their job, you're not getting yours. Now, I'm sure that it's pretty obvious to anybody listening why this might create problems, but I did mention in the other video that BEE smashed our energy sector, and you may have wondered how. Well, what happened was that we implemented BEE at the state-owned utilities company, Eskom, at which point they gave a large swath of their white employees 6 months to train their black replacements and then to get the hell out. So not only is 6 months obviously not a long time, but a lot of those white employees understandably resigned earlier, probably feeling kind of jolted, or they just got job opportunities because they were high skilled. Many of them saw the writing on the wall and they actually left the country, so we lost those skills completely. And that's a common story in the country. Chasing skills out because they happen to belong to white people. The problem is that BEE acknowledges that a majority of the population had its development suppressed prior to 1994. You can't then take that population who haven't been developed and throw them into positions once held by developed, skilled individuals. You're not helping anybody in that situation. You're giving a high stress jobs to people who can't do it, and they end up earning the entire country's hatred because they can't do the job that they should never have been expected to be able to do, to be quite frank. Anyway, what that led to was a decade or so of no to low maintenance at Eskom, our utilities and power producer. And so South Africa entered an energy crisis in 2007. I think it's from 2007, and we haven't gotten out of it yet. We're still in that same energy crisis. We have semi-regular load shedding, which is where they schedule power cuts to different portions of the grid to sort of ease the stress on the whole grid. And even with scheduled power cuts, we have regular unscheduled blackouts. Often your unscheduled blackouts align with somebody else's load shedding, and sometimes it seems like they've put load shedding on when you're not supposed to have load shedding. It's a whole mess. Yet the point really is that at the end of the day, a 14-year energy crisis is clearly not going to be good for growth. And it's not limited to the energy sector, even though that's the most notable in one's day-to-day life. But I mean, BEE has had a negative impact across industries and fields, including education, medicine, engineering, transport. The list goes on. It's an absolute mess. It's a dog and pony show. It's shite. It just is. For a program that was supposed to create growth, not only did it fail to do that, but it did redistribute wealth, which is also not what it was supposed to do, and predominantly redistributed wealth upward, with big corporates investing in navigating BEE and finding loopholes around it and through it, with black elites being offered positions that they weren't necessarily qualified for just because of the color of their skin, where poor black people wouldn't be given the same benefits. You had a lot of corrupt ANC cadre deployments that were justified by BEE. It's just been a mess. It's not just the fact that on the face of it, it's a poor policy. It's also been taken advantage of by people in power, so that it's been used and abused against the best interest of the country, essentially. The net effect of BEE, black economic empowerment, has been that the wealthy elites have grown wealthier, the upper and middle classes shrank, and the poor got relatively poorer. And that is what woke thinking always does to a nation. It thinks of justice in very Old Testament terms and applies it without consideration for consequences. And of course it has no consideration for consequences. It has no firm grounding in reality. And this is why governments and corporates encourage it. They get to pocket the profits they make off of pandering to manipulated masses, while leaving the people to try fill their bellies with self-satisfied delusions of justice. But I don't honestly believe that any South African is finding true satisfaction on an empty stomach just by knowing that somebody else won't be able to feed themselves for very much longer.